Bien, bonjour et bienvenue à notre rendez-vous de midi en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le mardi 22 mars. La réunion hebdomadaire des chefs de cabinet est toujours en cours, donc nous vous confirmerons l'agenda du collège plus tard dans l'après-midi. J'ai une petite mise à jour de l'agenda de la présidente. Jeudi, la présidente participera à la réunion des dirigeants du G7. Et maintenant, je passe la parole à Sonia qui remplace Johannes pour une annonce sur un outil pour aider les chercheurs qui fuient la guerre en Ukraine. Sonia.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Bonjour. Today, the Commission is stepping up its support to the researchers fleeing Ukraine. Thus, we have launched the Era for Ukraine portal. This is a one-stop shop that will provide useful information and support services to Ukraine-based researchers and researchers fleeing Ukraine. As part of the European Union's strong political, financial and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, the new portal provides an overview of existing support initiatives at EU level, per country and other services. It will help affected researchers find housing and job opportunities and facilitate the recognition of their diplomas. In the same vein, already last week, the President of the European Research Council, Maria Leptin, asked all 5,600 ERC grantees to provide temporary employment to refugee researchers and support staff from Ukraine. This new ERC initiative is included in the Era for Ukraine portal that we launched today. So far, within just a couple of days, 380 offers have been received on this Era initiative. You can find more information and details in the press release we have prepared for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. It's really good to see the solidarity also in the world of research. Then, moving on, a General Affairs Council is currently ongoing on the other side of the street, which Vice President Maroš Šefčovič is attending on behalf of the Commission. Ministers will discuss the funding of European political parties and European political foundations, the 2022 European semester, and preparations for this week's European Council. A press conference with Vice President Šefčovič will take place at 3 p.m., so please keep your questions on these topics for that press conference. And with this, the floor is yours. Right, I will go to Mose.
Hello, okay, thank you very much, Eric. Yes, I would like to ask a few clarifications about yesterday's Foreign Affairs Council meeting, which dealt mainly with Ukraine. One question is about this idea about the rapid deployment capacity of about 5,000 troops from the member states. I wonder if there are more details about that. And especially, I would like to ask if it somehow is linked to the so-called mutual defense clause in the treaties, because it was not mentioned in the statements yesterday. And the second related question is about further sanctions against Russia, especially sanctions against the natural gas import from Russia. I think Germany accounts for about more than 50% of that gas import and continues to pay for it to Russia during the war. And High Representative Borrell said it was not on the agenda yesterday. Now they thought it would be on the agenda in this week's summit. I wonder why, because as the war drags on, I suppose there is a need to reconsider those sanctions. Thank you.
Thank you. Two very different questions. On the first, it is Nabila. On the second, it is Peter. Nabila.
Thanks, Mose, for your question. On the rapid deployment capacity, first of all, I would like to refer you to all the communication material that we have published yesterday. There is quite an extensive press package with a fact sheet specifically on the rapid deployment capacity that you are talking about. And of course, the strategic compass was published, including a memo and other fact sheets and material. But by the rapid deployment capacity, our objective is, first of all, to learn from the past. We have had EU battle groups since 2007, but we have never deployed them. Why? Because there was a lack of political will to use them. The cost of their deployment for the states responsible for them, the units on standby, that were not always adapted to the needs of the crisis. So the rapid deployment capacity will go beyond these limitations. It will consist of substantially modified EU battle groups and pre-identified member states' military forces and capabilities. It will be accompanied by other measures related to decision-making and financing, which will make it more usable than the EU battle groups. And the Compass is, as you know, a political document. It provides us with the ambition. The main elements relate to the rapid deployment capacity. And these are concrete parameters, will include additional documents, of course, after reflection at the military experts. So this is what I can say at this stage about the rapid deployment capacity. As for the mutual assistance clause, Article 42.7 was so far only activated once, as you know, in 2015, after the terrorist attacks in France. The treaties do not specify the modalities of how to actually implement the article. In order to increase EU readiness and resilience, member states agreed to further increase the common understanding of the implementation of this article, in particular through scenario-based discussions. For the other question, I will let my colleague Peter come back.
So let's see, are there other questions related to the decisions yesterday on the rapid reaction force for Nabila? Please only keep your hand raised in the chat if your question relates to this issue. Tommaso, tu as une question sur la force de réaction rapide.
Oui, bonjour, Tommaso Galavotti d'Incarnos. C'est seulement un follow-up à la question de mon collègue. Est-ce que vous considérez la rapid deployment capacity seulement un commencement? Parce que ils sont 5000 soldats et la Russie a attaqué l'Ukraine avec 100 000, 150 000 soldats. Donc je voudrais savoir si vous considérez la rapid deployment capacity seulement comme un commencement. Merci.
Comme tu le sais, Tommaso, le Strategic Compass est un document qui évolue. C'est-à-dire qu'on a des timelines et après ces timelines, il va y avoir des évaluations et c'est sur ces évaluations que les États membres vont décider où aller et comment faire pour aller plus loin si on considère que ceci est nécessaire. Ceci étant dit, l'Ukraine n'est pas le seul sujet du Compass. Le Compass est un document qui a été sur lequel on a travaillé depuis 2 ans. La guerre en Ukraine a visiblement a été un catalyseur pour aller beaucoup plus loin, pour adapter le document. Mais il y a énormément de sujets et énormément d'instruments dans ce Compass sur lequel l'Union européenne est active et est ambitieuse. Donc le document est très, très ambitieux. Et il est évident que c'est un document qui est aussi work in progress, c'est-à-dire qui va bouger selon l'ambition et ce que les États membres vont décider.
Merci Nabila, je me corrige, c'est bien capacité de réaction rapide, les mots ont leur importance. Okay, so we move now to Moses' second question. Is it on this as well? Okay. Lorenzo.
Oui, demander quelques détails en plus concernant, premièrement, les 500 millions d'euros qui ont été... Donc, il y a eu l'accord hier, mais est-ce que les 500 millions d'euros qui avaient été déjà décidés la première fois ont été déjà employés, payés de toute façon, il y a combien quelle partie de cette chiffre a été déjà employé et quel est le statut de ces nouveaux 500 millions d'euros? Est-ce qu'ils doivent encore être formellement décidés par les organes techniques, etc. Et l'autre chose concernant l'article 42.7, tu disais, Nabil, que les États sont en train de réfléchir. Est-ce que tu peux nous dire quelque chose en plus? Où est-ce qu'il y a cette réflexion? Et qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Parce que on a toujours considéré ça un peu comme une chose analogue à la clause de défense collective de l'OTAN, de l'article 5. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose de moins que ça? Sur quoi on discute, en fait? Merci.
Sur la décision politique hier de la deuxième tranche de 500 millions d'euros, c'est une décision politique qui doit être adoptée formellement. Elle s'ajoute aux 500 millions qui avaient été adoptés ultérieurement lors du début de la guerre en Ukraine. Tu m'excuseras, mais je ne pourrai évidemment pas rentrer dans les détails de qu'est-ce qui a été remboursé. Ce sont évidemment des sujets qui sont très sensibles sur lesquels je ne peux pas rentrer dans les détails. Quant à la clause de l'article 42.7, je t'invite à aller sur le Strategic Compass. Tu verras qu'il y a toute une partie qui est dédiée à l'article 42.7.
Ok, je ne vois plus de questions sur ce sujet et donc maintenant je passe la parole à Peter. Peter, the question on the sanctions that Mose had asked.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mose, for a question. I can only refer in my answer to the answers given by High Representative yesterday evening at the press conference after the FAC, where he said that no decisions have been taken regarding the further possible restrictive measures and sanctions by the European Union. But this issue was indeed one of the issues on the agenda, one of the issues where the ministers had exchange of views, and they all agreed that we continue to stand ready to proceed with more sanctions if the situation requires so. Everything remains on the table and the discussions are ongoing on what more and how we can do in order to stop Putin from continuing with his brutal aggression against the Ukrainian people.
Thank you. Are there other questions on sanctions for Peter? Lorenzo.
Hier, le haut représentant okay, I speak English. The High Representative said yesterday that it was not a matter of member states that were against or in favor of, say, not 2 or 3 member states of the sanctions concerning energy. But we know that there was a discussion on energy and that there was at least one country that was absolutely against, which was Hungary, apparently, and all the countries that had problems. Is not there a problem for the unity of the EU in responding to Russia? We are giving every day 200 million to Russia to pay for energy. We have given from the beginning of the war more than 17 billion to Russia from the beginning of the conflict because we pay for the energy. Is there not a problem for the unity if we have countries that don't recognize this?
Thank you, Lorenzo. On the discussions and details of the discussions, I think it's no secret about the position of individual member states. I think the ministers made these positions very clear in their doorsteps, either before or after the FAC. There was discussion, of course, about all these aspects, and I think the EU is united in its awareness of the need to cut ourselves off from the supplies from Russia. The discussion is about how to do it, but there is a general unity in the view that we need to do it as soon as it gets. On the positions on individual countries, as expressed in the Commissions, I'm not at liberty to comment on the positions of member states within the confidential discussions, but I can only recall the statement by the leaders from Versailles and the statements also made in public, both by High Representative and the foreign ministers of individual member states, that there is a huge, huge awareness of the European Union to deal with this issue, and we want to deal with it because in the end it's about crippling Putin's ability to continue financing the slaughtering of Ukrainian civilians and destroying of Ukrainian cities and villages.
Thank you. I see only one hand raised for the moment, so we go to you, Yarakina.
Yes, thank you, Eric. This is a question for Peter. In fact, I have two questions. Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti stated that for the upcoming elections in Serbia and the right of vote of Kosovo Serbs, there should be an agreement between Pristina and Belgrade. Is this a hint that there will be a big leaders' dialogue soon in Brussels, as elections are supposed to be held in less than 2 weeks? And the second question is somehow related to sanctions and alignment. Is there a deadline for a certain country to align with sanctions decisions? Because there are rumors that Serbia might align with your decisions, but after elections in Serbia that are scheduled for April the 3rd. Do you have any kind of information concerning this? Thank you.
Thank you, Jaracina. So I will start with your question on the elections. The European Union, and we said it several times, has been very actively engaged in efforts, including together with the Quint on the ground, to find a solution allowing the eligible voters in Kosovo to exercise their democratic right and participate in the upcoming Serbian elections, parliamentary and presidential elections also in Kosovo. The European Union has acted as a facilitator on a technical level, but also at the high political level, with High Representative being also involved in his contacts with the counterparts on both sides, to act as a facilitator between Kosovo and Serbia in order to find agreeable practical solution that would allow the Serbian citizens or dual citizens holding also Serbian citizenship in Kosovo to participate in the elections. And we were trying to help to find a practical solutions using the analogy from the previous practices, which were established in the previous votings for eligible citizens residing outside of their country of origin. And while we acknowledge that Serbia was forthcoming in finding solutions, we regret that consensus between the parties has not been eventually found after Kosovo's decision to reject a constructive proposal presented by the Queen. So we consider this decision contrary to Kosovo's commitments to its European path and to its European future, and contrary to the principle of protecting the democratic rights of all its citizens, including the citizens belonging to non-majority population. So now we expect Kosovo and Serbia to refrain from actions and rhetorics that could increase tensions, and we also call on both parties to act with responsibility and engage constructively in the ongoing negotiations in the framework of the EU-facilitated dialogue. To address the second part of your question, of the first question, there is no meeting that we would be able to announce as of today, the meeting within the framework of the dialogue at the high level. But we are working towards this end, and we really call on both parties to act responsibly and engage constructively so that it is possible to organize such a meeting. And on your second question regarding the alignment, typically when the EU adopts sanctions or restrictive measures, the countries eligible are invited to align within a certain period. This is usually a period of a few days, up to few weeks, depending on the circumstances. Usually now it's a few days where the countries have the opportunity to express their willingness to align or not. North Macedonia, Albania, they do 100% alignment with all the recent decisions, which is absolutely appreciated by the European Union. Serbia so far has decided not to align with all the declarations, positions and decisions. We expect, of course, Serbia as a candidate country to align with Europe's decisions and positions in terms of foreign and defense policy. And you noticed over the past few weeks that Serbia, in the end, decided to align with some actions going back also actions and decisions going back to 2014, 2015 regarding Crimea, for example. So we hope, we expect that Serbia will gradually and progressively align with all these decisions, because this is not a question of economic interest. This is not a question of choice. This is a question of a moral stance. The EU sanctions are there in order to prevent Putin from financing his continued aggression against independent, sovereign state and its people. And this is what the sanctions are about, and this is what we are trying to explain to our partners in the Western Balkans and around the world.
Yakina, I see you still have your hand raised. Do you have a follow-up?
But okay, there is something that I noticed, Peter. You mentioned North Macedonia, and Albania, but you skipped Montenegro. So far, we cannot, given the latest lack of decision to confirm sanctions by Montenegro government, does this mean that Montenegro doesn't stand 100% aligned with EU decisions? Statistically, I mean.
No, Montenegro has a track record of 100% alignment. They also supported the UN vote on condemning Russian invasion. They also declared the willingness to align with the sanctions decisions. We've been discussing this on Friday at midday, and our position still stands. We appreciate Montenegro's track record in alignment, and we expect, in line with Montenegro's principles and aspirations, that they will also continue to work very hard in terms of implementing all the decisions and declarations that have been made in regard to Russian aggression against Ukraine and EU decisions in this regard.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Peter on sanctions, on foreign affairs? Yakina, you still have your hand raised? No, or not, perhaps not. Okay. It would be good if I had my screen active. Okay, so... right, so we move on. Yes, please. Hold on, you need to wait until it's ready. Yeah, go ahead.
Now it works? Yeah. Harold Schumann for Investigate Europe. I have a question regarding the announcement that the law proposals for the Farm to Fork program will be postponed. Has this actually definitely been decided yet? And if yes, until when they are postponed?
Thank you. So this is a misunderstanding of how things work. As I've had ample opportunity to say, things are on the college agenda only after the heads of cabinet have confirmed that they're on the agenda. We have an indicative list of points that are meant to come in the following weeks and months on the college agenda, but it's only indicative, and therefore there is no postponement. It is simply that for the moment, those points are not yet on the college agenda. Okay, I have lots of hands raised. Sorry, I had an technical issue with my app. So I will now go to David.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning. Good afternoon, I should say. A question on sanctions to Peter or to you, I don't know who is competent. From a legal point of view, is it possible to apply national sanction on energy, decide to stop oil import, for example? Or this is an issue that have to be done by the EU or decided by the EU? Thank you very much.
Peter.
Well, I mean, in general, the EU sanctions are sanctions agreed by all member states by consensus or unanimity, if you want to. But then, apart from this venue of introducing restrictive measures, each member state is also free to choose their own national, let's say, sanctions regarding their own or in line with their own legislation. So national sanctions, I'm not going into details of saying whether it's in specific case of oil embargo or energy, but in general, the member states have the opportunity to introduce their own national sanctions, but of course they are then applied only in the national context.
Thank you. So I see that there are other questions on sanctions, so I go to Ekrem.
In fact, I asked a follow-up on Serbia elections.
Go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Peter, can you please explain the position of the Commission on yesterday's position of Montenegro related to Serbia elections of April 3 in fact, and if there is a difference between what you ask in Kosovo and Montenegro, if you can elaborate eventually, and what's the difference, if so?
Thank you, Ekrem. When it comes to Montenegro's announcement, we took note of the response of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Montenegro to the Embassy of Serbia. It is our understanding that Serbs in Montenegro will be able to exercise their right to vote in the premises of the Serbian diplomatic mission in Montenegro. So it's different context, different circumstances. So this is what I can say about Montenegro's announcement.
Thank you. So I come back on sanctions with a question from Thomas. Thomas, on ne t'entend pas. Okay, we have a problem with your mic source, Thomas, so we will continue to take questions on foreign affairs, and in particular the situation in Ukraine. Peter Thompson.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I just have a quick follow-up regarding the timeline that Peter mentioned quickly. You said that you're ready to take that there is consensus to take further action if needed. What has to happen before you expect more sanctions to be implemented? Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. The discussion of the ministers was about what to do more and how can we be even more effective in stopping Putin or preventing Putin to increase the brutalities which he is committing and his troops are committing in Ukraine. As I said, as High Representative said, there were no specific decisions made, but the European Union, its member states and the wider international community continue watching the developments in Ukraine and the behavior by Russian troops and Russian decision makers when it comes to the continued aggression. And as we did until now, we continue to react to the developments on the ground in order to show that this is something not acceptable to us. So apart from supporting Ukraine in all the possible domains and in all possible ways, we will continue to assess the best and most effective ways, what we can do also in coordination with the international partners to stop Putin from continuing this brutal, illegitimate, illegal and inhuman aggression against Ukraine.
Thank you. Okay, Thomas, we come back to you. You still have a wrong source for your mic, it seems. Yeah. On sanctions? Okay, let me... Thomas, I'm afraid you'll have to contact us bilaterally. Other questions on sanctions for Peter? In the chat, please only keep your hand raised if your question is on sanctions or more generally the situation in Ukraine. Thank you. Moussa.
Oui, bonjour, vous m'entendez bien?
Allez-y.
Allez-y. J'ai une question concernant, vous avez dit hier que Madame von der Leyen présidait une réunion sur le niveau énergétique et pour voir la diversification de sources d'énergie pour l'Europe. Est-ce qu'il y a des résultats? Est-ce qu'il y a un progrès là-dessus, surtout sur la diversification de l'énergie pour l'Europe? Merci.
Merci. La réunion d'hier était une réunion de prise de contact entre la présidente et ces grands groupes énergétiques. Elle n'avait pas pour but de mener en soi directement à une avancée concrète. Comme vous le savez et comme Tim a eu l'occasion de le dire à de nombreuses reprises ici sur le podium, la Commission déploie depuis maintenant des semaines et va continuer à déployer des efforts afin de diversifier ses sources d'approvisionnement en énergie. Bien entendu, dans ce contexte, travailler avec les grands groupes énergétiques qui sont en soi des intermédiaires importants en matière d'achat d'énergie, notamment d'énergie fossile, fait parfaitement sens et c'est pour cela que la présidente avait convoqué cette réunion et que nous continuerons bien entendu à rester en contact avec ces groupes. Voilà, je vois qu'on a un petit problème de discipline dans le chat, vu que j'ai bien dit que je souhaitais que l'on reste concentré sur les questions sanctions. Je vois pas mal de mains levées qui, a priori, n'ont pas trait à cela. Alors, on va passer à autre chose. Oui.
Actually, the same issue on energy. There is, I don't know whether you've seen a story by Reuters saying that the leaders will agree to a joint purchase of liquefied natural gas and hydrogen ahead of next winter. And actually, according to the, quoting the draft of the summit statements, it says that the Commission will all urgently work together with the Member States on the joint purchase of gas, LNG and hydrogen. So I would like a comment on that, on what the Commission, how close are we to such an agreement among the Member States? Thank you.
Well, I think on how close we are to an agreement among the Member States, you need to call the Member States and ask them. But quite frankly, obviously there is a UCO, there's a European Council taking place on Thursday and Friday. Obviously the situation in Ukraine will be at the center of the debates, but also the consequences on Europe. And one of the issues that is clearly on the table is energy. Now, Hebdo is still ongoing, so I can't officially confirm the points that will be on the agenda, but it's clear that energy is one of the topics that the Commission will be coming with for the European Council. What exactly we will be proposing will depend on the college meeting tomorrow. So I would invite you to wait until after tomorrow's college, the press events related to this, and at that point in time you will be in a position to learn more from us on this. Follow-up?
Just to insist on this, whether, we understand that, we have to wait for the college meeting tomorrow, but could you give us a hint whether there is, talks have been advanced concerning this issue of the joint purchase of gas?
Look, the President obviously, and not just the President, but also Commissioner Simpson and other commissioners are in contact with Member States in view of determining what is the best approach in order to secure energy supplies for Europe. But again, I would ask you please to wait until we come forward with our proposals tomorrow. That being said, it's absolutely obvious, and we have said it here in the press room before, that it makes sense to leverage the EU's unity as a bloc when it comes to our energy policy, just as it made sense when we were discussing how to provide vaccines in the context of the COVID crisis. So all I can say is watch this space. We will be coming forward very quickly with our proposals. Okay. Mose, you seem to have a question related to gas storage, so I'll take your question next and perhaps ask Tim to come to the podium. Mose, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Okay, it seems to me that if really the Commission is going to propose some kind of joint purchase of natural gas and so on, then perhaps there is no need to continue, let's say, to import natural gas from Russia just in order to fill the storages for next winter, because we don't need this gas for this winter. It's already over. So according to your assessment, how do you think that will influence the decision to decide on the sanctions on import natural gas from Russia in the near future as the war continues? Thank you.
I must say I did not understand your question. I don't see the link between the different issues. But again, as I said, I would ask you to wait until we come with our proposals tomorrow. If Hebdo confirms at this point, will be on the Commission agenda tomorrow. Right, let us continue. David.
Eric, I'm not sure if I can ask this question. It's about Ukraine. You briefly opened up a possibility to ask a general question about Ukraine. And then we got into other subjects. May I ask it?
Go ahead, David.
Okay, so the reports are saying that President Zelensky has banned 11 political parties in Ukraine, which cuts down on the debate there, and also that it has nationalized television outlets, so there's basically centralized television. So I'm wondering, from the point of view of democracy, what the European Union is doing to increase the political plurality and also freedom of information in Ukraine. Thank you.
So, I call back Peter.
Thank you, David. What we are doing, we are trying to make sure that there is a country where there are people who can enjoy all these freedoms and principles. So Ukraine is now fighting for survival. The country is being systematically destroyed by an aggression led by a neighboring political leadership. So to talk about some rights now and development of democracy when the country is under brutal, inhuman, illegitimate and illegal attack by a military force from the neighboring country, I think this is not really the appropriate time. The priority right now is to help Ukraine to save their people and prevent the further destruction of the country. Any measures that the legitimate Ukrainian authorities are taking in the state of undeclared war and under the brutal aggression is in order to preserve the lives of the citizens and to fight back and to fight off this aggression. Before the conflict was started by Russia, we had ongoing regular discussions and dialogue with Ukraine how to address all the necessary reforms that have been ongoing in the country. To try to portray Ukraine as a country where there is no democracy and where the rights of its people, of citizens, are being curtailed and limited is basically echoing the Russian propaganda and disinformation, trying to portray Ukraine as a country run by Nazis, as a country run by extreme nationalists, and as a country where there are systematic human rights violations going on. There is nothing like that going on. Quite to the contrary, what Russia is doing in Ukraine is amounting to war crimes and trampling on all the freedoms and rights that people have been enjoying until recently in Ukraine.
Switch off your mic. There's martial law at the moment in Ukraine, no? We are, the country actually is in a state of martial law. So obviously it's an exceptional circumstance in which the country finds itself. Sorry. David, short follow-up.
Well, I just resent a little bit if there's an implication that I'm putting forth Russian propaganda. I come from a country which had political plurality during World War II, and plurality doesn't mean that political plurality should not be cut off during war necessarily. So
What's your question,
what plans
please,
are, that is my question. What plans, the original question has not been answered, what plans has the European Union got to preserve democracy and freedom of information inside Ukraine?
Can I just say that actually the EU has actions that support the plurality of media and the work of journalists, in particular journalists who have had to flee the country and who are themselves currently based in Poland. I don't have all of the information off the top of my head. We can certainly come back on that, but we are supporting the work of Ukrainian journalists in this context of war, in particular with the help of neighboring countries. And we will come back to you with more detail on that, David. Okay. I have to say that I will need to end the midday briefing today at 10 minutes to 1. So we will move on to other issues. I will close the chapter on Ukraine in the wide sense. I see there is a question on energy from Samuel. Samuel.
Oui, bonjour Eric. C'était pour revenir brièvement sur les discussions exploratoires avec les éventuels futurs fournisseurs d'énergie fossile. Est-ce que vous prenez soin dans les discussions déjà de mettre en place des garde-fous moraux pour s'assurer de ne pas signer des contrats avec des pays qui ne respecteraient pas les standards démocratiques de l'Union européenne ou alors des pays avec des visées belliqueuses qui pourraient justifier à l'avenir de prendre des sanctions et qui feraient en sorte qu'on se retrouverait un peu dans le même cas de figure qu'aujourd'hui avec la Russie?
Merci. C'est de nouveau un peu une question de relations internationales, en fait, et tu sais que l'approche de l'Union européenne est toujours de mentionner et de garder en tête les questions notamment de droits de l'homme et de liberté d'expression dans ses relations avec les pays tiers avec lesquels nous entretenons des relations de nature diverse et notamment commerciales. Il en ira de même, bien entendu, en ce qui concerne nos tentatives de diversification de nos sources d'approvisionnement en énergie. Et pour rappel, il ne s'agit pas simplement nécessairement de trouver de nouvelles sources, mais aussi d'amplifier celles qui existent déjà. Griselda.
Merci. C'est bon. Ce que j'aimerais savoir, c'est, excusez-moi, j'enlève le casque parce que sinon, c'est en combien de temps, quel est le délai maximal sur lequel vous travaillez pour que la connexion puisse être prête et que le stockage collectif et massif et les achats collectifs puissent enfin avoir une efficacité si on pense à l'hiver prochain. Merci.
Je crois que nous avons annoncé déjà à de nombreuses reprises quels sont les efforts que nous allons faire pour pouvoir réduire notre dépendance vis-à-vis des énergies fossiles provenant de Russie, y compris à l'horizon de la fin de cette année. Et encore une fois, il ne me revient pas ici aujourd'hui, avant la réunion du collège de demain et avant le sommet européen qui a lieu jeudi et vendredi, de faire plus de commentaires. Mais notre objectif, c'est évidemment d'avoir un stockage en matière de gaz qui nous permette d'affronter la consommation de gaz en Europe à l'horizon de l'hiver prochain, qui soit suffisant. maintenant, tout notre plan d'action s'inscrit dans cet objectif-là. Je te demanderai, ainsi qu'à tes collègues, de bien vouloir maintenant attendre que les réunions de demain et jeudi et vendredi se déroulent afin que nous puissions éventuellement vous fournir des détails supplémentaires. Alors, je vais passer la parole à Gabriella, qui a demandé la parole il y a... Ah pardon, Griselda, tu as une question de suivi. Non? Ok. Si? Enfin, je n'arrive pas à t'entendre. Grisal, je pense vraiment que sur ces questions énergétiques, nous allons maintenant attendre demain pour vous donner plus d'informations. Je passe la parole à Gabriella.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, thanks. Yes, I just wanted to do a quick follow-up on the question on Farm to Fork earlier regarding the presentation of the nature protection package. You've said that this is not yet decided. However, yesterday, as you know, there was an Agrifish Council where the chair, Julien de Normandie, himself said that the ministers still not had any news regarding any date, and the package was expected to be presented tomorrow. So I think there's been a sense that this is going to be indeed delayed. Can you please confirm that? And if you can't, can you tell us a bit more of why the Commission is considering this postponement, especially with campaigners and environmental scientists saying that securing sustainable food production is the right way to protect the European food security? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriella. You need to understand that there's a point of principle which is at stake here. We provide media with the so-called liste des points prévus in order to help you plan your work on the clear understanding that this is an indicative list. And that points are shifted constantly up or down, depending on a variety of factors, including whether the files are sufficiently mature, whether there are too many other points on the Commission agenda, etc., etc. And therefore, I cannot at the same time make this information available to you on the basis of the fact that it's indicative, and just to remind you that previously this information was not made available, right? To basically avoid us having to have to justify things which we are not in a position to comment on. We decided that we would make this information available in order to help you plan your work, but you need to understand that it is the meeting of heads of cabinet that decides. If others believe that because a point is on the indicative list is going to be on the agenda, there is a misunderstanding. And every week, the list of plans changes, sometimes quite substantially. So this is a simple situation in which we find ourselves. In terms of substance, nobody has said that the Commission is in any way changing course. It is clear that we continue to have political priorities which are enshrined in the Farm to Fork strategy, and that the Commission aims to pursue. Now, obviously, we have now a major crisis unfolding, in particular on food markets, in view of the invasion of Ukraine, and therefore the debate that everybody is discussing, including the ministers of agriculture yesterday, from what I understand, is how you actually combine those two objectives to the best effect. So watch this space. The proposals will be presented to the college in due time. But it's not simply because a point disappears from an indicative list of possible agenda points on the college that you should draw any unwarranted conclusions. Okay, I will take two last questions, going slightly over time. Yes, please.
Thank you. This is just a short question following the announcement about the research portal. Is this portal going to be connecting Ukrainian scientists with existing EU-funded programs, or is it a portal with a much wider network? In other words, if University X has a research project that they think a Ukrainian might be interested in but is not EU-funded, then that information will be available.
Thanks for your question. The portal is much broader, so it provides information available for the Ukrainian researchers at EU level, so covering all the EU programs which could be relevant for different researchers, postgraduate researchers, so all the variety which is eligible, but then also country by country. And the portal covers not only EU countries, but also associated countries which are participating in the Horizon Europe program. So those are beyond 30 countries. So there is a very well-structured information, country by country, where all the available funding and also assistance opportunities, because it's also about recognition of diplomas, it's about funding, it's about assistance to find accommodation. So there is a lot of opportunity to find services for the Ukrainian or Ukraine-based researchers. And then also what is very important is that the information will be in the coming days available also in Ukrainian. Today it is in English, but we are really working flat to make sure that it's available in the next days in Ukrainian. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Last question goes to David.
Merci Eric. Rapidement, quelle entreprise était convoquée dans la réunion d'hier? J'ai vu Total, Shell, BP, E.ON. Je voulais savoir s'il y a d'autres entreprises. Et si je peux, aujourd'hui, le Premier ministre italien a dit vouloir l'Ukraine dans l'Union européenne. Je voulais savoir à quel point ou quel calendrier vous prévoyez pour donner votre opinion par rapport à la demande qui était transmise par le Conseil.
Bien joué, tu poses deux questions sur deux sujets complètement différents en une intervention. En ce qui concerne la liste, nous l'avons diffusée hier à un certain nombre de collègues, donc Tim te l'enverra. Et en ce qui concerne le calendrier, nous n'avons rien à préciser, à rajouter, sauf si Anna souhaite dire quelque chose. Anna, rapidement.
Très rapidement, David, on va travailler au plus vite possible pour délivrer notre opinion. Ça, c'est très clair et c'est un compromis de la Commission. Donc, oui, c'était short.
C'était ce que j'allais dire. Merci, Anna. Voilà, cela conclut notre rendez-vous de midi. Je vous donne rendez-vous demain pour le College Readout et nous vous préciserons dans l'après-midi l'ordre de passage des conférences de presse et briefings techniques. Bon après-midi.